Hello everyone and welcome to live stream number like 19,472. Something like that. Time does funny things when you're hanging out in the Londundren, doing some painting and all that stuff. So I'm excited because we're back for our second week of Ghost Rider, the extravaganza for the Spirit of Vengeance. We're going to finish up our Ghost Rider today and take him across the finish line so that we can have a fully painted miniature ready for the tabletop. So with that, let's just dive right in and get this camera off of me and my fancy dancy monster machine and instead onto this awesome Ghost Rider himself. So if you did join us last week, you can always go back and check out how we got to this point on our miniature. We decided to go with blue flames rather than the classic orange flames for something a little different and a little more spooktacular. We've got a few things to do today. We're going to dive in, we're going to finish out the flames, we're going to do the whip. We want to go back and touch up the bike. We're going to do a little OSL stuff, effects, just some really cheap tricks to give ourselves a little bit more flame glow. And we got to do the skull, of course, on our Ghost Rider. So let's dive right in. The first thing I think we're going to start with is we're just going to kick things off with the chain. So I'm going to start by using my bright blue color. Because you want to remember, like we talked about last week, and this is Adriatic blue for those that missed it. You want your brightest color to be at the center of your heat source. So the goal with the chain here that's going to make it really easy to get a nice hot effect is we're going to do a really nice light color all over the chain, and then we're going to dry brush a darker color over top so that that only hits the outermost portions of the chain, and then that'll give us the impression that our chain is glowing and nice and hot from the inside. So I'm just going to mix in a little bit of Miskatonic Gray with this blue because I want to get it nice and light and nice and bright, and I might even use a little bit of flat white as well because I really want to punch this up. Ooh, that was a lot of flat white. That's okay, we'll work around it. But I want to get a nice, really light color so I can really sell that idea that our chain is nice and super hot. All the better to burn wicked souls with. So there we go. So we're just going to start and we're just going to lay this on. I'm keeping this paint rather thin so that it'll go on nice and easy into those cracks and crevices on the chain, and I just want to get a nice solid coat. And this will give us plenty of time to let it dry before we go back in with our dry brush. So you can already kind of see how this effect is already selling it even with just the one coat of light blue itself. And then once we add that darker color on the top, it's going to look really nice. And one of the things you can do with the chain is you just hold it steady if it wobbles on you a little bit too much because it is a thinner piece of plastic. That wobble, of course, also means that it's not brittle, which is great because then you don't have to worry about it snapping on you. We'll turn it like that so we can still get in the camera. I'll just paint on my hand a little bit. You could also leave the chain off as you painted, which would kind of make it a little easier too, so you could do it in assembly. I don't typically like to paint in assembly just because it's a little more challenging to then assemble the miniature afterwards. But whatever makes you comfortable and happy is certainly a way you can do it. So now I just have to get this part here, and get the edge of the chain. There. Alright, so we've got that coat laid down. Looks pretty nice. So we're done with that. Let's move on. We're going to kick out these tires really quick. So for the tires, I'm just going to use a basic black. Whoop. I'm just going to use this matte flat black from scale 75. Really simple. I'm probably also going to use this for a seat. We're just going to dive in my color around the wheel. And we'll come back through with our blues. We'll do a little bit of blending just to make that transition really nice and smooth. But because last week we kind of got a feel for where we wanted our colors to be from the flames, we can just go back in and kick out the rest of this. for the tire. So again, we're just kind of blocking out where I want the wheel itself to be as opposed to the blue. We gotta come back in here and kick this out. In there. And I could have done this before as well, but we're just doing it now because we were really rocking and rolling on the flames, so why stop? There we go. I'm going to get the seat really quick because we don't want that to be metal. That would be really uncomfortable. Just want that to be a nice flat black. I'm not really going to do anything to the seat either because no one's really going to see it. So we're just going to block out the color and probably leave it at that. Just make it a nice flat black. So we've got a lot of other cool elements that are going to catch the eye on this guy. And so sometimes you can cheat, quote unquote, although there's no cheating in painting. As long as you know like where your focal point's going to be, you can take a little less time on other things and spend that time instead on the parts that are more fun and that are going to be more seen. Like find your focus. I was talking with my painting group that we meet online every week, and we always have a chat going on. We're talking about stuff, and Steve started on his Rocket Raccoon, and both Dallas and I are like, well, you know, when you're approaching Rocket, just focus on the face and the gun. You don't have to worry about really anything else because those are the focal points of the miniature. And for tabletop miniatures especially, things that aren't going to go into a competition, finding that focal point and then just focusing on those elements is huge in terms of just making everything so much smoother. It'll make your painting a lot faster to let you spend the time on the things that are really going to matter because they're the parts that everyone's going to look at, ooh and ah over, and then you can kind of just speed through the rest of it in a really simple fashion. Ooh, let's get under that gas tank too. Alright, so while blowing our chain dries, let's move on and let's do a little bit of work on the bike itself. So last week we washed it all down, made it nice and dark. I'm going to use some thrash metal just to pick out some highlights on the bike itself. And we'll probably mix a little bit of our black metal in too because that looks pretty bright, so I'll just use a little black metal as well. And darken up a tiny bit. And for this you could use a dry brush if you did like a really careful dry brush just to pick out some of the highlights on the bike. You can go in and just do some spot highlights too with your brush. There's a lot of different ways to approach it. Again, the bike itself, the body of the bike, isn't so much what I would consider the focal point on the miniature, but it is, you know, important enough that we want to get a little bit of a feel going on for it. I'm just going to come in and I'm just going to start hitting some areas with the color that I want to pick out. So you can see we're going to hit that skull there, we're going to get the handlebars. I'm going to come back in and brighten this part up here too, just to make it stand out against that black gas tank. And then we're going to hit the exhaust. And so I'm mostly just looking to like pick out edges or pick out places where I think the light would really like shine. And this adds volume and helps create separation from some of the other pieces. Keep the parts that are further away from the eye, you know, darker, because that's going to help sell that idea of dimension as well. Things that are further away from your eye you're going to perceive as darker in color as well. So it's another way to kind of think about things as you go through in order to help make the miniature pop even better. Kind of make those details that are already sculpted on there even more visible to the eye and sell that effect. I'm just using my second brush here to blend a little bit, since I'm not choosing to do a dry brush, which might have been easier, but it's not the technique that I decided to go with. So I'm just using that second damp brush to help smooth out my color transitions. So that we can get some nice even coats going on. Right there. I'm not being too afraid of it. If I decide to go a little bit too far, I can always jump back and just tone it down with a wash or anything like that. So it's really quite simple. And I like this because you don't have to be too precious about it. You just want to get that sheen on the metal. And then we'll go back through and we'll add a little bit of that blue. And we'll blend some of that out and we'll get some nice, it's really nice looking flame reflection. And that'll add to the whole story of the miniature as well. It's just going to make everything look really nice. How will symbiotes work going forward? I mean, they'll work like symbiotes work. More specifically, answer that question that's being asked in the chat about symbiotes. We didn't really we made the decision early on to not treat the symbiotes as their own unique character. So, well, some folks out there would rightly point out that Eddie Brock and Flash Thompson as like an Agent Venom or something, or a symbiote Spider-Man, for example, a Peter Parker with the symbiote. That's the same alien symbiote, which is in itself its own kind of unique character. We decided to go with a little abstraction for the game and just not worry about that part, because having multiple aliases that you would have to track and all that was just, it was too much. I mean, there's a level of kind of, okay, we're going to be okay with this. You know, there's many iterations of like video games and other things where at some point you have to be like, okay, well, these characters couldn't all exist at the same time, but they're going to exist at the same time because it's going to make for the best game experience and make things clear. And so that's the direction we went with that. So the symbiotes work just like any other character, as long as you don't have two Eddie Brocks. Having two Venom symbiotes on your roster or your squad is not an issue. Because it just wasn't, the juice wasn't worth the squeeze, as some people will call it. I think that's a Joshism right there. Josh loves squeezing juice. It's like his thing. Alright, so we got that bike is now popping. We got those nice little highlights on it. We could take it even a little further if we wanted to, but I feel like that's good enough to go. And now I think we're going to move on and we'll jump to, ooh, I should hit the, well, I still have my black good. I'm going to get the belt. Because we want his belt to stand out. So we're just going to hit this belt here. Do it a nice flat black. A lot of this second stream is, you know, there are a couple of major things that we have to do, but it's also kind of the moment in the painting process where you're just going through and you're looking at the things that you still want to address or touch that you haven't done yet. So things like the belt. I need to do the belt buckle, obviously. Pick out some designs on the bike. Those kinds of things. Do I want to add some dirt or grime to the bike? How do I want to adjust the wheels and things like that? All of these things are items. Like, for example, the belt buckle, which I wasn't thinking about until right now. Just as you step around and you kind of manipulate the miniature and you paint, you're going to notice certain things that you need to take care of. What I jump out at you is things that you want to handle, and this is the time to do all that stuff. So, I'm going to move on. I'm going to use this Mojave White for the base coat of Ghost Rider Skull, because it's a nice off-white that I think will look pretty good for Skeleton Man. And then of course we'll go back through. So I'm just gonna get that on. And I'm not gonna worry too much about like solid coverage just yet, because I do have my blues on there. I'm going to be careful not to go too far into the flames though. But I'm expecting this to take a couple of coats, and that's alright. I want to build that color carefully and slowly so I don't obscure any details or anything like that. And I also don't want to mess with our flames. There we go. Taking out the face, work a little bit more on that forehead. Ooh, we got a Samoan in there. Everything's happening in the stream today. It's great. It's going to be a great stream. I'm going to finish this Ghost Rider, and he's going to pen and stare everyone. Speaking of which, now that the card is out, I can tell you, for those of you guys and gals and peoples who have been struggling to beat Thanos in the Ultimate Encounter, which released, Ghost Rider he just might be the hero you need. I played a really fun family Thanos Ultimate Encounter this weekend, where we messed with the rules a little bit. There's 4 of us. I got the 2 kids and the wife, and so Dad took control of Thanos in kind of a GM overseer role, and we got everybody to have a team of 3 different characters. At like 11 to 12 threat value each, and then we just kind of like rolled through, so everybody over the course of the scenario got to activate 1 character per turn, and we had fun. But man, Ghost Rider ruins Thanos, ruins him. It's great. Don't use the reality gem if you're Thanos facing a Ghost Rider. That's not fun. And Penance Stare is no joke. And I know, much like the symbiote, somebody's going to be, but the Penance Stare doesn't work on Thanos in the comics. And you are correct. Thanos does not feel guilt. So, he has no penance to give. But despite how much I would have loved to add that corner case rule in here, it was not the case. It was not to be. So Penance Stare does work on Thanos, for those wondering. It is the way to work. Alright, so we got our base cut on our skull going down. We have our chain going. We've got black on our wheels. I'm going to grab... Where's that color? I'm going to grab a bit of Abyssal Blue, and I'm just going to highlight up my darker black, my flat blacks, just to give them a little bit of life. So hop in there. And we're just going to blend. It's kind of like blue black out. I like this color to highlight up blacks, especially when I'm trying to keep my blacks overall a bit darker than normal. So things like tires and stuff like that, it works really well. To do, and again, I'm just going to use my other brush. I'm going to blend it out. This will just give a little bit of life to that black. Because flat, like true blacks, are It's really not how blacks work. So you want to give a little bit of color to them. Just to help make them pop a little bit. I know I said I wasn't really going to worry about the seat, but it's easy to just hit the corner of the seat to give it a little bit of a fake highlight. And get in here to this gas tank part. There we go. Come back in here. Just give that a little bit more life. That's good enough. Okay. Alright. I'm going to get that back tire just a little bit. Although that's really in the recesses, so having it be darker than normal is totally fine. Let that make it go. Alright. So, let's see. Where do we want to go next? We got the bike pretty much where we want to go. We hit the blue, so let's go over and do our Huldra blue. So this is our darkest blue color. We use the Huldra blue and we're just going to go over the chain. This is going to be pretty close to a dry brush, where I'm just going to get some paint on the brush. And I'm going to use instead of using the point like normal, I'm going to use the flat of the brush like this. And I'm just going to brush over the top of the chain. So it's not really a dry brush because I haven't gotten all the paint off the brush. Instead I'm just using the flat and allowing that to kind of mix, and then I have my other brush in my mouth so that I can quickly go to it if I need to the goal is to let that lighter blue exist on the bottom and only have the darker blues down on the top. And that gives you that sense, as you can see, that that chain is getting hot in the center and then it's cooling on the exterior, just like lava would or firewood or anything like that. So this is a really easy and quick way to kind of get that result and make it simple. The other thing that you could do, which I do love to do, but would take a little bit longer, is you could wet blend it too, and we might do a little bit of that on the end of the chain, just for funsies. Put this down for a second. Trying to keep this on camera while I work the really long curvy chain is interesting. The edge of that, and then grab that, and I can kind of blend it out a little bit. Again, I'm thinking about all of those, the most raised edges are the ones that I want to be the darkest. So it just comes down to thinking about kind of getting a mottled texture. The other way that you could really like accomplish this on the edge of the, like on that hook part of the chain, you could stipple, where you just like do a lot of texturing to get that really kind of lava baked texture in there. So there's a number of ways to approach kind of getting that fiery lava heat technique. On the underside of the chain people aren't going to see as much, so we can be a little sloppier on it. Just grab my other brush and kind of meld out my blues. I can always go back to my brighter colors if I need to. And depending on how hot you want the effect to be, like you could just do this over a pure white. You know, you could do a wash over the white. There's a lot of options, but already you can kind of see how we've got that effect of the chain is glowing from the inside and it's cooling on the outside. And that's really all it takes. And you can mess with that as much as you want. Go back in. Like I said, you could add little hot spots of white if we wanted to get really fancy. And take a little time. You could hop in like this. Stipple, yes, stipple, Dallas, stipple. You can grab a little bit of the white and we can come in and we can like stipple stuff in. Give ourselves a little bit of hot spots. And just think about where we want to go. We can grab that part there. We can stipple in a little hot. You can stipple in dark too to get that dark color. So, you know, the effect is really can go as far or as little as you want it to go. And since this guy is really only destined for the tabletop, you know, I'm not too concerned. Let's see what I'm doing here. Kind of like making it perfect. Come in with my other brush and kind of blend out those whites so they're not quite as harsh. Maybe I want the tip of it to be really, really hot, so I can just come in and do the inside curve, grab some of my dark, blend out some of the white side curves. So the sky's kind of the limit when it comes down to when you go into these effects and how you want them to look and all of that good stuff. But just the simple act of a light color on the whole chain and then go through and do the darker colors over the top a couple times and you'll get a really nice feeling glowy chain. The other trick is to make sure that you go across the sides, because you want to make sure that those sides are nice and dark too. Whoop. So get off camera here. Go. So now we got that nice glowy chain. Looks like it's radiating the same ghostly heat that we have going on other sides. Pretty happy with that. I might just grab a little bit of my white. Just dot in a couple of like heat spots here. Give it the sense that the edge is really on fire. I'm ready to punish out the wicked of the night. There. Now we got that nice angry hot tip on the hook. Go with the rest of the chain that's kind of got this nice glow on it. It's really simple. go back to the skull. We're going to take our Mojave white, and we're just going to use a little bit of flat white. And we're going to mix the two together to make a highlight. So this is just pure white and Mojave white. And again, you want to have that little tinge of like yellow or that off-white, that eggshell color when you're doing skulls, because it gives them the more natural look. It softens the white. Like pure white is so super rare in everything that you see, that, you know, when you do something in like a stark white or like even any primary colors, a lot of times it'll look kind of wrong. And that's because it's not really how you see colors. That's not how these things work. Like even white always has an undertone to it. Just like black always has a highlight. That's how those colors are defined. So when you're painting white, it's all about shades, and when you're painting black, it's all about highlights. So knocking those two down to make them just right is the way to do it. And will get you really good looking results. So our Ghost Rider. Come back in. We're just going to do a little spot. So we're going to hit the cheekbone really hard. Hit the top of the forehead really good. I'm going to hit those teeth really nice. So there is our ghost face. What we need to do is a little headlight, and then we're going to go through and we're going to come back in to these glows, and we're going to build those out so we have a little bit of OSL going on and everything's going on. So we're getting really close. Feeling pretty good. I'm going to just really quick come in and I'm going to highlight this flat black belt with the color that we used on the tires. So this is just Abyssal Blue. Again, the goal here is to keep the belt really nice and dark, but not pure flat black, because that's just going to look a little different and weird. So we just do a really quick, really thick layer highlight where I'm just going like from halfway up the belt to halfway on the belt, just to take away some of that black, but leaving the flat black showing underneath. Alright, and now, before we go into the skull too much, I want to grab a little bit of black. I'm going to thin the black out pretty well with water because I want this to run really well. And then we're just going to come in and we're just going to define these eyes. So the idea behind really thinning out the black is I want the capillary action to really work for me. So I just have to touch the brush. And then if I go overboard like I did there, I can really quickly just clean it up with my other brush. But by kind of thinning down the paint a lot, I can just touch and it'll just naturally run into the areas I want it to run. So you can see how I'm not really drawing in the paint. I'm just touching on those areas. And then I can go back in, and because the paint's so wet, it's really easy to kind of push it around and clean it up. Make sure that everything looks nice and tidy. So we just want this to be clean. So we're not going to do like crazy glowy eyes or anything. We just want him to have that nice skull look. Okay, and with that, I think we're ready to dive back into our Huldra Blue. So we're going to take Huldra Blue, I'm going to thin it out with a bit of glaze medium, because I want this to be kind of thin. I want this to be almost like a wash or a glaze. Because now we're going to go through and we're just going to build up some a simple OSL on some of the areas where we think the light from those ethereal ghostly flames would wind up. And this is kind of why I said that we can worry about. So we're going to come right here and we're just going to hit this edge of the bike. We're going to use our other brush and we're going to blend it out. We want this to be pretty subtle. We just want to tint. We don't want to like actually paint. So I touch where I think the light would go and I kind of blend it out. Hopefully that kind of shows up where you can see how we have this nice little area of reflective color. So it looks like we're getting a really cool kind of glow effect from the flame. That metal is reflecting the light from the flames. We do the same thing down here. And I'm using my darkest color for this because obviously as light casts, it's going to darken up to its true color. So we don't want this to be too bright, depending on the colors that we're looking for here. But we're just gonna come in, and it's really fun. You can do this on the base too, around where the tire is. So once the base is done, you can come in and you can hit, the areas around the tire if you want to give them a glow. And again, just use your other brush to kind of like blend it out. And so you can make a nice kind of flame glow effect. So you get that OSL going on from the tire. Once your base is done, obviously, but you can see how that kind of works on the base as well. And so these are just the things that I might come back in and just hit some of my flames a little bit more with this darker color wash. Blend that back out as well. Just add a little more pop, a little more color to the flames that we did last week, just because I want to give them a little bit more of that darker hit. But you're just looking for edges, you're looking for places where the light would catch, where the flames would kind of bounce. Like along the wheel well and stuff is a really great place to do this. And if you just kind of model it out so that it's faint but there, you'll get a really nice kind of simple OSL effect. And this is also why last week we talked about doing the bike first and doing the flames for last, because if you get spillover, come around the arm here, where those head flames would be. Kind of tease that out. But if you get spillover as you're doing the flames, then it's really great because it can kind of fake this effect for you anyway without even having to think about it. So you can be a little less specific about it, a little less precious about it, and you can just get similar effects. We're just hitting the inside of the wheels and stuff with this blue and glaze, just playing around wherever we think that light is really going to reflect. And this can be as heavy or as simple as you want it to be. Obviously, again, we're just doing this for fun as we want to, and it's enjoyable. Get the inside of this wheel well, or these wheel struts, because we got fire like breathing up there, so of course it would wind up there. There we go. Let's jump in really quick and do. We're going to make his light blue too, because why not? Make everything match. Makes sense, right? I thought about doing it yellow, and I was like, yellow will look weird. So we'll just... Oops, sorry, I'm off camera. We'll just hit this ghost lamp. glow going on there too. Some of our whiters, and this is just a wet blend that I'm doing here, so because I want this to go kind of quick and I've got my colors all out, I'm just wet blending my Hold Your Blue with my white blue to get a nice mix going on. So let's see, hopefully you can see that on the little ghost light. A little tricky, but it is there. So we're just coming in. The wet blend is just taking two paints that are still wet, and instead of blending them on your palette like you normally do, you just blend them on the miniature itself. It's a really fun technique, and you can just kind of get lost in it because as you work the colors, and you're going to get like different effects and stuff. You can do it with one brush, you can do it with two brushes, depending on how fancy you want to get. Normally 2 brushes is better, but your paints will also mix on your brush, so that'll make a big difference too. I'm just going to take some of this color and we're going to come in, and I'm going to take now this brighter color, and we're going to do a little bit of stippling at the center of these wheels because I want to get some like heat going on in them. So again, I'm just grabbing some of my really bright, my white mixed with my, what was it, Adriatic blue. And I'm just coming in and I'm adding some little hot spots with a bit of a stipple. It's not really a true stipple, but it's the same idea where I'm just kind of like stabbing and adding texture. And then I'm going back through with my other brush. I'm just kind of blending them out so they're not quite as harsh and they feel more like part. But this is just adding a little more heat to my wheels and my flames. So we're just playing with temperatures here and color saturation and pop. So this is just part of the, like I said, part of the experience where there's no right or wrong way to do it. You're just experimenting. You're just kind of going by feel and by look and what you're happy with and what you want it to look like and all that stuff. And if you go too far, it's easy to fix the mistakes. So I have not painted my thumb nearly enough today. I didn't need to as much. That's true. That's true, Sean. I'm really slacking. It's always funny because when I come down from my office or whatever, my wife will she'll always tell me how much painting I've done that day by how thick the paint is on my thumb. Some days it's really thick, some days not so much. But, you know. How much work did you actually accomplish up there? Just gonna add some more heat onto this side as well. Add those little like dots of color. Just to build out some of the character and the texture. We're doing this because we got the time. We have all the time. And then we're going to go in and we're going to do we'll do the skull. We'll give it a little glow and we pretty much have ourselves a done Ghost Rider, which will be great. Ready to punish the wicked. Punish the wicked. All on Josh's timeline too, which is even better. Because we love it when we can make Josh happy. That's always a win in everybody's book. A little bit over here. So now I'm just coming in and I'm just adding a little bit more heat to the center of the flames on Ghost Rider's head while I've got my white out. And so I'm just thinking about, like, you know, where's the center of my heat source, and then building out from there to really amp up the sense of those flames, the overall fun. Of this character, which is all this playing you get to do with the fire that he's covered in. I'm going to go back to my Hold Your Blue here. And so when you're just adding a little bit to the head, because the skull is kind of in the heat source itself, you don't want to use your super dark color. You want to kind of use a mid-tone or a middle mix. You do want it to be kind of glazy, which is maybe not a word, but the one I'm going to use. Because obviously, in the comics and stuff and the drawings, the skull is typically fully encased in fire, but you can't do that very easily in miniature. So we're just going to play a little bit with our colors. I'm just using that middle tone to kind of glaze over and give ourselves some sense that there is some reflection on the skull without losing the skull's overall white color. So this is pretty minimal. You want to be pretty soft with it, or you can go really heavy with it. I mean, it depends on the final look that you want. I still want the skull to really be the selling point here. So I'm just kind of really doing as soft a blend as I can on that blue. So I'm just barely tinting kind of the overall look, but I'm getting the idea that those flames are reflecting off of Ghost Rider's face here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a sepia, and I'm going to make a sepia wash. And I just want to come back through and I want to hit the skull to bring out a little bit of the detail in the teeth and the nose and the eyes, and this will just give me a little bit more depth from that white. I don't like my skulls to be particularly super clean and bone white. I like them to have a little bit of dirt and grime. Just want to hit that nose really good. I want the nose to be black because it's not that big of a crevice, but I do want it to be like in there and sharpen it out. So there we go. So I'm pretty happy with that. Looks really good. We got those shadows in there now for the skull, thanks to that really light sepia wash. Got our details, we got our flames. We've got a whole 10 minutes left. Man, we're doing great. We're doing great. So this is kind of where we've wound up on our Ghost Rider. See, we could go back through and add some more to the flames and the fire. Like, there's lots of places that we can play with this guy. But overall, I think that we're in a pretty good spot. So I'm just going to mess around a little bit with the center of those wheels. Ooh. And we're just going to hang out. Just going to enjoy the last 10 minutes of this Ghost Rider extravaganza together. I'm going to add more color to my... Okay, and then we're just going to come over... I mentioned how we were going to kind of extend our blues over the wheels, and so to do that, I just kind of lay down some of the color that I want, then I just stretch it out. Same with the skull, although I'm a little heavier here than I was in other places. I might have, you gotta think of where like the hot spot ends, and then I go down to that darker blue. But it's just simply a question of kind of like stretching the color out. So I'm just adding another layer over top, because that's how we kind of assume here, or at least I'm assuming, the flame works on the wheel. Now if the whole wheel was on fire, obviously the goal here would be to paint the inner wheel with our light color all the way through, and then do what we did with the flames, which is to build out to the darker colors on the outside. But somewhat like we did on the back wheel here. So on the back wheel we have way more of the wheel being kind of on fire, or at least glowing. And then less of it as it goes out. In the front wheel we have more wheel showing, so it just becomes a question of, you know, building that color out and then blending it out over the wheel itself. And again, this is something where you can get really, really sloppy because you have that other brush to blend with. And kind of the patchier it looks, to some extent, the more it's going to look like that wheel is inside the fire, because you're going to get that tint of color. And if you go too far, you can always just blend it right out with your clean brush, kind of like that. Or you can just apply more of the dark color to it. But obviously here, we're just spending the last few minutes that we have together, kind of cranking up our overall effect. And the more white you add, the hotter it's going to look. So we can go really hot towards the center if we want. And we can grab more of our darker blue and go really cold towards the edge. And it's just a question of blending the two together, using our other brush, until we're happy with the results. We can be happy whenever we want, because he already looks amazing. So good. And then just like that. So there we go. So with that, I think I'm ready to call this Johnny Blaze with Ghostly Blue Flames a success. So again, not a lot of specific work, just a lot of like finalizing work and touch-ups on this guy that we had to do. Most of the bulk of our work we were able to accomplish last week in an hour. So overall, really happy with how this version of the character came out. It looks super awesome. We just have to finish out the base. Again, we can use that same blending technique to give ourselves a nice glow effect of where the wheels are and make it look like he's really tearing up the street. Yeah, I already said that, Dallas. It's right here. We showed it. It's right here. Look, glow around the wheels. Glow around the wheels. It's okay, Dallas. It'll happen. Same technique that we used on the tires though. So you're just going to take your darker colors and you're going to blend it out over whatever your color is on the base. So we'll paint the base, we'll get him done, we'll post a picture of him up on social media so you guys can see him in all his finalized glory, but this is the completed Ghost Rider himself. Hopefully you guys learned a couple things, are excited to get your hands on this miniature. The card went up last week, which was pretty cool. And I'm very excited for people to get their hands on this guy. He's one of my favorite Marvel characters, like I talked about. So we're very much looking forward to having him on the tabletop and to see how he does in different People's Crisis teams and such. So, with that said, I hope you guys had a blast. I believe that we will be showing off the winners from our last month's painting challenge, which was Black Order on Dallas's stream, as well as post them up on social media and stuff. So that's coming very quickly. We had a lot of amazing entries. Don't forget to submit your entries for this month's painting challenge, which is metallics. We'll be selecting those, I believe, next week. So you guys have a couple of days left if you want to submit something. Hashtag Painting Protocol on Instagram. We're looking for your best blingy metallics, so show them off. We love seeing everything. I hope you guys had a blast. We will see you guys next Tuesday as we dive into the one and only Dr. Vincent Strange. And then otherwise, I will be joining you guys on Thursday as Dallas finishes out his Ghost Rider. That'll be at 1 p.m. Pacific, as well as the Doctor Strange kickoff next week at 1 p.m. Pacific as well. So until then, guys, stay safe, enjoy the hobby, and we will see all of you MCP people on the next one. Take care, guys.